The addition of fractions with like denominators was almost like comparing fractions with the same denominator. Because they had the same denominator or unit, all we had to do to add them was add the numerators together. How do we add fractions if the denominators are different? Be sure that your tray is reset, and as I work a problem on the computer, you follow along with me using your tray. Mitch raked 1/2 his yard, and his sister Julia raked 1/3 of the yard. How much of the yard did they rake all together? Just like comparing fractions to add them, both fractions have to be in the same unit or denominator. When I first looked at the fractions, I noticed that the denominators were different. I knew that I had to have a common denominator, or a number that could be divided by each of the denominators before I could compare them. So I simply made a 2x3 rectangle. I divided the rectangle into 2 equal parts to find out how many 6 were equal to 1/2. Next, I divided the rectangle into 3 equal parts to find out how many 6 were equal to 1/3. Since the fractions are now written with a common denominator or unit, we can add their numerators together. As we can see, 3/6 plus 2/6 equals 5/6. 3/6 plus 2/6 equals 5/6 is the same as 1/2 plus 1/3 equals 5/6. Mitch and Julia have raked 5/6 of the yard. Let's work another problem. This time I'll start it and you can finish it. Remember to reset your tray. Jackie walks 2/3 of a mile to school and Pam walks 1/4 of a mile to school. How far do they walk all together to school? When I look at the fractions, I notice that the denominators are different. I know that I have to have a common denominator or a number that can be divided by each of the denominators before I can add them. I simply make a 3x4 rectangle. Your teacher will now pause the movie while you finish the problem. When he or she is ready to continue, they will restart the movie. Here's how I finished the problem. I divided the rectangle into 3 equal parts to find how many 12ths were equal to 2/3. Next, I divided the rectangle into 4 equal parts to find out how many 12ths were equal to 1/4. Since the fractions were written with a common denominator or unit, I could add their numerators together. As we can see, 8/12ths and 3/12ths equals 11/12ths. 8/12ths plus 3/12ths equals 11/12ths is the same as 2/3 plus 1/4 equals 11/12ths. Altogether, Jackie and Pam walk 11/12ths of a mile to school. Here's another problem to work. Quang had 2/5 of a gallon of paint remaining. Kui had 1/2 of a gallon remaining after painting a room for their mother. How much paint did they have remaining altogether? Your teacher is going to pause the movie while you finish the problem. They'll restart the movie when you're ready to go on. If you have a question, remember to ask your teacher. Here's how I worked the problem. When I looked at the fractions, I noticed that the denominators were different. I knew that I had to have a common denominator or a number that could be divided by each of the denominators before I could add them. I simply made a 2x5 rectangle. I divided the rectangle into 2 equal parts to find out how many tenths were equal to 1/2. Next, I divided the rectangle into 5 equal parts to find out how many tenths were equal to 2/5. Since the fractions were written with a common denominator or unit, I could add their numerators together. As we can see, 4/10 and 5/10 equal 9/10. 4/10 plus 5/10 equals 9/10 is the same as 2/5 plus 1/2 equals 9/10. They have 9/10 of a gallon of paint remaining altogether.